Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Getz with another edition of our podcast series. Today, we are lucky enough to have Lawler-Muzquiz with us, who has actually her own podcast that I was on. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, she's the director of channel development for Alcatraz, and we'll talk a little bit about Alcatraz and what they do, which is really, I think, very, very cool in the area of security. And then we'll, chat about our podcast. So, Sarah, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you for having me today.
For sure.
Yeah, so as you all know, my name is Sarah, and I am about 5.5 years into the industry now. I started as an intern at Johnson Controls 6 years ago, and then went full-time with them and worked as an integrator for physical security for about a good 4.5, 5 years, and then discovered Alcatraz through my time with JCI and was pretty mind blown by what Alcatraz is doing and how they're changing, the industry for the better. And, was given an amazing opportunity, one in which I obviously couldn't turn down. And now I'm here with Alcatraz and I'm leading the channel development. So from a ground up perspective, we are building all of our go-to-market strategies. We are building out our channel, whether it's consisting of security integrators, contractors, engineers, architects. And my focus is for new construction and retrofit work. So the channel is obviously quite large, but it's an amazing opportunity. And I'm so excited, to be doing this for Alcatraz right now.
So let's talk a little bit about physical security, because we haven't really talked about that on this podcast, and help people understand. I think when people think physical security, they sort of think of a security guard, which I have to say a lot of the security guards kind of get a bad rap because a lot of them are highly skilled individuals. But from that, let's talk a little bit about physical security for a building or a data center or, really any place, and all the different pieces and stuff that are involved. It's not just throwing up a camera like you do at your house, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great way to start the conversation, Carrie, because to your point, a lot of people, misinterpret or just maybe don't fully understand what physical security means and what we do. I like to first off start by saying, security as a whole, whether it's cyber or physical, we are protecting against something, right? So from my angle and what I'm doing and how I work within the industry, I'm on the side where we put all the electronic systems together in large scale applications, whether it's a large, high-rise building or a data center, right? Where there's a lot of internal components in which we have to protect. And so my side of it is putting all of that actual nitty-gritty of components together to then enable the guards, right? So there's a lot of different, avenues or areas within physical security that people can focus in. And so one of which is obviously the actual physical people that are then making and enforcing and helping us follow the compliance within the facilities, who are utilizing all that technology that is in the facility. And for me, I sit on the technology side. And so, like I said, all the components, whether it's a card reader or, beyond just the camera, now today we have so many different things out there from an artificial intelligence perspective, where we have analytics and data and things in which are, enabling those folks who are protecting us. And the technology itself is so important. It often gets overlooked. People don't think about who actually went and installed that card reader or put in that turnstile right at the front in a lobby when you walk in, or, those are really the parts and the smarts that we're talking about when it comes to technology and my side of the business. But I will say too now, we're seeing a very big transition, I think, in the industry where we're now finding more of this marriage between the physical security guards and all the technology, because traditionally we would take a reactive approach to, how we do security. And because of AI and all the new technology coming out today, we're able to take a more proactive approach. So we're not just bringing it together, but also it's a really cool time to be in this industry because there's becoming more overlaps and marriages between all areas within security as a whole, even cyber as well, obviously. And so that's where I sit, and that's kind of how it looks within the big picture of things.
I think a lot of people are scared about AI because they assume AI is going to kill jobs. And I will say this, I think AI is going to displace some people, but certainly it's a huge opportunity. Tech is not going away, and AI is certainly not going to replace people. People still have to program AI, and they still have to, and I'll give you a good example. If you have a credit card, sometimes you get a purchase that's denied because you're out of town or you're some way, and there's an AI algorithm that runs back there and says, wait, this charge is not normal. So we're going to get rid of that charge, and we're going to deny that charge. But then some human has to follow up and say, "Hey, was that really you?" Or, is this charge yours? There's some level of human interaction. And I think people misunderstand that AI really, computers understand zeros and ones. They're not really brilliant. People think they are, and they can do some crazy processing, but somebody still has to tell them how to do that processing. And so I think the opportunities that are out there, especially with AI, are amazing, and it doesn't really displace. I think it just changes people's jobs. What do you think?
I could not agree more. I think, Carrie, what you're saying, when it comes to changing jobs, and, I like to consider that evolution, right? Like, I think in time, as you think about way back in the day when we had the Industrial Revolution, and now I would consider this maybe a tech revolution, right? Things are changing so rapidly and so quickly, and people aren't actually losing jobs. If anything, our economy, and I know we've had a tough climate lately, but like in general, when it comes to tech, it's one of the most employable areas and industries because we are actually adding jobs. We need more people now, right? Because the reality is, from my perspective, AI is just making us smarter. It's making us more efficient. We're able to do more with our time. We can unleash more creativity because all the monotonous things that we're so used to doing prior, we can now kind of move aside and have this, quote unquote machine, or this ability to utilize artificial intelligence to supplement and make what we're doing in our daily, in our days and in the tasks that we're doing clear up, and then have more room to unleash new concepts and ideas that maybe we couldn't do prior because we were fogged by all the, monotonous things that we have to do every day, right? Like, I think AI as a whole is actually amazing. I think we need more of it. I think, especially in the physical security industry and where I come from, we don't have it. It's still not a common thing to see, except for machines, except for the data, the analytics we have like on the video solutions out there. But in general, I mean, AI is still very new to this industry, for us at least.
It is pretty new. And I think really, if you take physical security as a whole, everybody has this sort of vision of some security guard sitting behind 52 screens and somebody's watching all of those things. And, we know that cameras can zoom in for motion and cameras can do other things. But realistically, people are just people, and there's only so much. When you add some of that other AI on top of that, there's things that could be noticed that might not have been caught otherwise. And it sort of adds an extra few pairs of eyes really to the equation. And it boils it down to something that's actionable. So the guy really knows that this is something you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think one of the ways I like to describe AI is something in which it gives us humans the ability to think less and do more. And we can eliminate human error, and we can make our environment safer, because once we can receive the information, the data, we can then do something with it, right? Like, one of the things I've noticed, for example, when it comes to, intelligence around tailgating, right? Let's say you have a server room and you can't have a physical security guard sitting at that door 24/7. It costs us a lot of money, right, to employ someone like that. But imagine if you can have a smart solution that's sitting there that is able to track and know when an event like tailgating could be occurring. And imagine how much time that team that already is deployed within the facility, the physical security team, can save. And, let's say something bad is going to happen, we can take a more proactive approach to something, right? So if we can get a notification that a tailgating event is occurring in real time, we can react almost immediately, right? And imagine the catastrophic event that could occur that we can avoid by acting so quickly, right? If you have somebody sitting there all day just monitoring video, how does that person know if indeed the people walking into that space are actually allowed? What if our own interpretation has a flaw in it, right? And we can't just keep doing things the way we've done them for so long just because we're comfortable. We have to find new ways to innovate and keep our environment safe.
Sure. And for those of you that don't know what tailgating is, that's when two people get in on one badge. It's not the big parties that you have at football games, which I have to say the Grove at Ole Miss is the best at. But anyway, I digress.
Way better version. I'll say that for sure.
It's one of those reused words that means something different. There's quite a few of those in this industry.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, that's my 2 cents, I think, when it comes to, how we can use AI and make ourselves smarter and leaner and more creative.
So let's talk a little bit about all the pieces and parts that go into the physical security space. We've talked about badge readers, but of course we have biometrics now, which I think AI definitely brings a lot to the table there. We have the physical security cameras themselves and the ability for those to pan, tilt, and zoom in. And not just the supplying of all these pieces and parts, but the installation and the training of these pieces and parts is a huge industry. And it's one that a lot of people are coming into without necessarily a 4-year degree. This is a great trades-based industry for a lot of what's happening. And certainly there's a lot of parallel skills that fall into physical security and things that we can do. So people coming in from the military and other places, once you get to cybersecurity, I think those skills are built upon once you get in these roles. But these are really great jobs where you don't have to have a stupid amount of debt to work with a company under an apprenticeship and learn really how to do a lot of these installations.
Absolutely. It's interesting, Carrie, because quite often when I talk with, my colleagues or my peers and, to understand where they come from and how they got into the industry, I would say the most common answer is, by accident, right? Like our industry in physical security and what we're doing, you have people who do have those 4-year, 6-year, 8-year degrees, some people with the masters, right? Or you have your electrical engineers who are coming from a 4-year institution. But you also have people who come from the industry since their youth. I mean, there's a lot of folks who've come up through the ranks of whether it's the military or, our public safety. You also have people who kind of just stumbled upon it. And I think what's interesting is that it really, our industry, it's not like we have a course in college where you can go study how to secure a building. It is something I think quite often is overlooked, and actually something I love about ASAS as is, which is a large corporation that, a lot of security folks are a part of. They've really made this great effort to educate young upcoming, individuals who want to get into our industry and would like to have a more formalized way of doing so. They've created a lot of different learning programs and have partnered with a lot of the different trade schools across the US and actual globe to enable people who are younger, who have interest in joining our industry, but may not know exactly how to. And I will say that there is no one size fits all for this industry. Typically, when you go and you want to work in IT or you want to do information systems or, marketing or, other things out there, quite often you have degrees that match that. And we don't really have one, with our industry. And I'll say that, for me, my experience, I definitely stumbled upon it. I learned from a mentor. I joined Johnson Controls as an intern, and I was being exposed to all the different systems within a building. And I received training in which college can never teach me. And I learned a lot of what I know from the field. And I was very lucky and fortunate to have a very close friend now, mentor, someone, his name is Steve Sandoval. He has a huge name within the physical security industry. And, I was very fortunate to be able to shadow him early on in my career. And, that's a lot of what sparked my interest personally in really diving further into this industry, because before joining Alcatraz, I was not just doing physical security solutions, but I was also designing and engineering, mechanical and HVAC systems. So I think that what is important to know for those out there who are interested, it's really important that you do your own research, learn, join the different organizations that you can discover, whether it's as is or SIA, or, through some of that research, you'll find there's a lot of different groups that you can become a part of, and latch on, find a mentor, find somebody that's already in the industry, express your interest. I mean, we need more people. There's a huge generational gap right now between the baby boomers and the millennials and Gen Z is the up and coming generation, and we need more people. We really do.
And I will say this, I'm a member of As Is, and I got my PSP there, which is a physical security professional. They do have a certification for that. But also it's one of those great organizations that has a bunch of scholarship money out there that where you can get a scholarship for a lot of these. And if you join a local chapter, especially if you're a student, the local chapter dues, I think is $10. And most of us within the organization will sponsor a student anyway. Mm-hmm. But they have all kinds of study classes where study groups where you can get together and study for the different certifications. And they really are working towards making this a better industry. And people just don't realize how deep I think this industry is. There's all kinds of levels of different things that you can do from a security perspective, all the way down to being a corporate security officer where you take care of who comes in and out of a corporate building, and it ties into HR. But it is a very, very deep industry, from installation, even designs and architects, from a RCDD standpoint, and getting all of the designs down on paper through the actual installation. So certainly some cool stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the Rock, because it's different. And I don't want to make this a commercial by any stretch of the imagination, but talk a little bit about how the Rock is different and how that falls in with edge compute. And the reason that I'm asking you to do this is because one of the things we talk about on this podcast is that IT jobs are everywhere and data center jobs are everywhere. And as edge compute comes around, they're literally going to be in every tiny little town. There's going to be a job for everybody to do tech that doesn't involve fixing somebody's desktop or laptop. So tell us a little bit about the Rock in a non-commercial format.
Absolutely. No, I'm always happy to share information around it. And I agree, Carrie, I don't want this to be a commercial either, but what I'm gonna share is more about the execution, the approach. The Rock itself is great. The Rock is the name of our product. We have a appliance. It's a security appliance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term appliance, means it's in this industry, we have different levels of smarts when it comes to building a system, an actual electrical component system to enable physical security teams, right? So when you have card readers and cameras and servers, right? There's servers that we have to process all the data and information, either store them on or through. Nowadays, as a lot of us know in technology, we are utilizing the cloud, the black magic cloud. I like to joke about that one, because who would have thought we'd call a big storage net a cloud and I know a lot of people like to use their imagination, but the truth is that the systems themselves are extremely, layered. And when I think about physical security and the actual solutions themselves, the way I like to describe it is typically you have the smartest part of the system at the top. And traditionally, we'd have the quote unquote least smartest part of the system, the devices that are in the field at the edge, at the end of the line when it comes to a hierarchy. And, traditionally, we've always let the top of the hierarchy make a lot of those decisions for us. Or, that is where most of the data is being stored, or the actual processing is happening at the top. And typically, the components that sit at the top are where you would find them in a IT server room. You would find them in a physical security office. You would find them in, areas within a building that have extra security to protect that, because obviously it has a lot of information and we have to protect those components to have a working system. But I'm bringing this up for a reason, because facial recognition is a concept in which our product, the Rock, utilizes, but we've completely changed the way in which we use it. And I think the execution is important to share more about than the Rock itself, because a lot of the concepts that we are doing right now with access control and with our solution, which we call autonomous access control. So when you think of autonomous solutions out there, like self-driving cars, right, where a car's making its own decisions on the highway. If another car comes close, it knows to pump the brakes, or it knows to veer to the left or veer to the right. The way we're utilizing artificial intelligence and the way that we are using machine learning is enabling an autonomous access control platform, which the Rock is providing. So the Rock itself is a device that you would put into the field, quote unquote, within the building. So you would see a Rock mounted on a door next to it, sitting about 5 feet high. And typically, as most listeners are probably used to seeing within their buildings, they scan a badge, and then a green light would usually flash off of the card reader, and the door unlocks and you can walk in. And that's for areas that are probably higher security areas, or just doors that need more control. And the Rock itself plays in to that existing solution. So basically we basically bolt on to what's already there. And, we are taking all those smarts that you're used to seeing in the server rooms or in the IT, IDF and MDF closets or the security rooms, and we're bringing it to the edge. We're bringing it to the actual location of where the decision has to be made. So before I keep going, Carrie, is there anything you want me to further describe or define? Because I can button this one up, but I just wanted to give some context.
No, I think that's a great example, and it fully explains edge compute.
Yeah.
And this is really where I think the job opportunities are coming in a city near you, so to say. But all of this technology that used to reside on this heavy traffic going back and forth, latency is a big issue. And that's the time it takes for a packet to get from one place to another and back again as an acknowledgement. And so the more data that you have and the more it has to transfer from one location to the other, in some cases, that's not good. You don't want to know, to your example with the cars, if you have a car that's really close to you, you don't want that data to have to go somewhere else and be processed and come back before it tells your car, hey, wait a minute, you need to stop. Mm-hmm. And so that really, I think, is driving a big push for this edge compute. Smart cities are a big component of that. Mm-hmm. I've done, quite a bit of work here lately with smart cities, smart buildings. Certainly there's a good component to that, where you just want that processing locally. Mm-hmm. And those decisions being able to be made locally and not have to traverse. And for smaller companies, there's a lot of small companies out there that have this cloud first approach. And actually there's some larger companies that have that cloud first approach. Once the information going into the cloud is usually free, right, or, almost free. And the trick is when you start getting that information out of the cloud and the communications back and forth and the amount of bandwidth that you're using, all of that has an impact on what your costs are. Yeah. So being able to pull that closer to you at the edge definitely has not just latency implications, but certainly cost implications.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. So like when you think about it, and I guess to button up really like what the Rock is and what we're doing, I mentioned facial recognition. So, we by a category, if we want to say it that way, we fit into the biometric category of physical security systems. So biometric usually refers to a person like me. And if anyone goes to the airport, for example, and you've seen the Clear system out there where you walk up and you can go through the security checks a little quicker because you don't have to wait in line. You walk up to the machine, it scans your eyes, or it takes your thumbprint, your fingerprint, right? You can use your own person to authenticate and to confirm you are who you say you are. And so biometrics in and of themselves are a very, very complicated and, interesting, I guess you could use as the term to describe it, category within the industry, because biometrics have been around for a very long time, although the way we use them is where we've seen concern. And so there's a lot of different minutiae I can get into, and I'm going to avoid that. But what I'm going to say is that the way we're utilizing the person or the biometric ourselves to authenticate we are who we say we are and confirm that we indeed get access within the door that is being quote unquote protected or secured is a very different way than what we're typically used to seeing. And I think what's interesting to note is that part of why I personally, joined Alcatraz was because, a lot of people out there can have great ideas, right? Like you can have a great idea and a lot of people can have the same idea, but a lot of the times when it comes to innovation and actually being successful, it's about how you execute it. And one of the biggest differentiators with what I saw with Alcatraz was the way that they were actually executing the technology. And our founder comes from Apple, and his execution strategy was one of which an Apple engineer would, execute. And I'm sure you, to those listening, and Carrie, like, we know Apple, right? Apple is a very particular and, very, what's the word? I guess technological.
Secure centric.
Yeah, security centric, right? Technologically advanced. They're innovative. They're so creative, and they've always, and once they relaunched back, in the early 2000s, they brought things to our world that we never saw before. And, I think that was what was so interesting with The Rock and what they're doing, because that was the feeling I got. Like, I like to rewatch Steve Jobs, intro of the iPhone many times, or like the iPod. And it's interesting to me because I love his style. I love how he brought that to the market, and he blew people's minds. Like when he said to people, "Oh, I don't just have a phone. I have a phone, and I have something that you can, listen to your music on. And you can also search the web. Oh, and yeah, you can also communicate your emails through," right? And people were just sitting there and they're like, how in the
What?
world? They're like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, it was something in which that was just so mind blowing. And that's what I think is the cool thing about The Rock, is that it's not just a biometric access control device. It's a true security appliance that brings so much that we're already used to doing and seeing together. And a lot of that, the way we're doing it, it's powered by AI and machine learning.
Facial recognition is one of those areas where there's pros and cons, and certainly more than one conspiracy theory floating around about what people are doing with your face. The cool thing about tech to me is that it always builds on the last iteration to make the next iteration better. And so once people find out something's possible, then a million things happen that utilize that thing. And then the next thing becomes possible, and a million more things happen that utilize that thing. And that to me is the coolest part of tech. And wherever you start in this industry, even if you come in from outside, if you start installing cable and pulling cable for security appliances, or, Johnson Controls is a good example. A lot of these companies pay for your college. They'll pay for you to get that additional training and expertise. And they're looking more for skills-based hiring now, which I think is great, than just starting with, it has to be a degree first. Although I'm not slamming degrees, but, that is kind of the part of this podcast, is that there's room for everybody in tech, whether you have a degree or you don't have a degree. And if you can work for a company that's going to pay for your degree, then you can get out of college without a ridiculous amount of student debt. And this is certainly one area where I think it's just so easily possible to work with some of these companies and start progressing and figuring out a lot of the training. Like, to your point, you're not going to find that same training in college. But as you start working with all these different things, the companies will do the training for you and help you understand how their products work. I mean, they want you to be successful installing these products. They want you to be successful implementing these products, and they go out of their way to make sure that you're successful.
Absolutely, Carrie. And that's one of the things. So you hit on a couple things, and the first thing, I will answer your question. You did ask about where I sit on the side of the table regarding facial recognition. I think it's important to note, because I realize I explained our solution like very high level, but like to put it really simply, you also mentioned Face ID. So what the Rock is, it's a device that will enable a frictionless environment utilizing your face as the biometric template. So like typically we have a badge that we use to present to a door. In this scenario, you just walk up, it knows, it scans you and utilizes AI to confirm you are who you say you are. And then we associate that with the badge number of that card you already had. And then we send that to your access control system and it opens the door for you. And so that plays directly into my answer about facial recognition, because when I spoke earlier on execution, we are utilizing facial recognition for no reason other than confirming you are who you say you are. We are not utilizing it to take any of your information. We actually don't even know who you are. The way we're using the artificial intelligence and the facial recognition technology is we're mapping your face, and we're utilizing 3D sensors, which are like little mini cameras, like camera lenses, to take points. Like if you imagine polka dots, like on your face, and we're mapping your face and saying that's quote unquote person A. And then person A gets matched to a badge number. And that is all we know about who the person is. So in my scenario, Carrie, to answer that first part of your question, I am all for it. I use it for my phone. I will use it for a door. I have no problem with it being in that environment because it's an opt-in environment. I am giving permission. If I'm asking to access that door, the owner of that building has every right to know who I am that is asking for access. The same way my phone, I don't want someone taking my phone and trying to get into my phone. I own my phone, and my phone should know I am who I say I am. And I think it's a very interesting concept because we know Apple is the one that came up with that, right? And decided we're going to be the first to do that. And they were not scared of any of the social constructs or opinions that were going to come out from that. People fell in love with it. No one wants to use their finger to put in a passcode anymore when they're opening their phone. It is such a luxury, but also now such a necessity. And it's interesting too, because Vince, our founder, was actually the lead of the engineering team at Apple that piloted that and brought that technology to market for the iPhone. So his intention and the way we're doing this is so different than what we've seen it be done in the past. And he's truly just taking this new approach to it and making it better.
So that's kind of my point. You start out with facial recognition, and then things get built on top of that. And I think what people don't realize is when you share your face on TikTok and all of these other websites, there are companies that farm your face. Mm-hmm. There are millions and millions and millions of facial imprints that are being stored globally by companies that farm your face off of Instagram and all of these other sites. So it's not like your face is protected entity anyway, but making sure that you know where it's used is certainly different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, right? I think to me, it's about educating. It's about helping people understand what's happening. And even today in this climate, I live in California, and we're a California-based company, and people have been coming to us saying, are you getting pushback? Like, what's the response to the facial recognition? And it's so important that people understand, like, one, obviously for our solution, but also for others out there that are doing, that are trying to maybe do what we're doing, or for example, the iPhone, right? Nobody has banned an iPhone. No one has banned that Face ID technology because we all understand it's for the proper moral right reasons. And that is Apple's effort and approach to protect what we have on our phone, right? Because I don't know about you, Carrie, but I know for myself, I live on my phone. I mean, I do everything. I can go on vacation and still be just as present, even though I don't want to be. But if I need to be, I can. And I can tell you, like, especially with phones today that are being provided by employers, like employers surely don't want anybody getting that phone, right? They have firewalls and all these things built in and all these extra security layers in a phone, and require, some of them even require VPNs, like personal VPNs. So you can't just go to your coffee shop and someone can grab your data. I think what people need to realize and understand is that, it's about how the data is being used and who is getting it, right? It's not about the data itself, because whether you like to hear this or not, your data is everywhere.
Oh, sure. Anybody with a smartphone that thinks they have any semblance of privacy now is probably not living in the real world.
I agree. And it's unfortunate too, Carrie, because I think that what I'm realizing is there's not enough people sitting on our side of the table yet. And to your point and your questioning, your point about jobs and job opportunities, there's not enough of us yet to really make that true effort we need to help the industry turn a page, because it's still quote unquote so new, but at the same time, it's not new. But in the way we're doing it, we are changing the game. We are making it for the better, and we're doing it in the best, most positive way. There are tons of jobs out there that are asking people to go and engineer systems to grab data and utilize your data in a not so nice way. I mean, think about when you go and say to someone, like the other day, I told my roommate, I said, "Oh, I want to get some new shoes, that I want to get some new white sneakers." All of a sudden, over the last 7 days, all I see are ads about white sneakers.
True.
Where do you think that information came from?
Yeah, your roommate ratted you out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. You see what I mean? Like we're evolving. This industry is moving so fast and we're growing so rapidly, and we need more people, and we need more people on our side of the table.
Absolutely. And we need younger people on that side of the table. I think part of it is a convenience factor, because it's so cool to have something that's very convenient to use. And I would love to be able to have my face open my front door when I have my arms full of grocery bags.
Oh yeah.
Right. So there's a convenience factor there to a lot of that kind of stuff. Opening your phone, lots of different things. So the convenience factor is certainly part of it, but I think there's a moral and ethical part that goes with it that really is another part of this industry we haven't really talked about on this podcast yet. But the only way that that's going to happen is to get more people involved, to your point. We have to have those people that aren't afraid to be that gut check and that balance for the information that we have. And it's kind of, I sort of equate it to radar guns and radar detectors. So, every time somebody comes up with a new radar detector, then they have to come up with a new kind of radar gun to catch you if you're speeding, and vice versa. Is it going to be cameras? Is it going to be, what is it going to be? And, the whole process of chasing where your information resides, who has your information, what's being done with it, it takes very skilled programmers to catch those hackers. It takes very skilled, cybersecurity folks to catch the guys that are doing the ransomware. And we see these ransomware attacks all the time. And it's not that people don't have security appliances. It's not that people don't have security protocols in place. It's that somebody figured out a way to get around that security. And so you have to have people on both sides of the fence. There's for lack of a better term, balance of good and evil that really exists in this industry. And it takes those people, new people, new talent, diversity. That's why I think diversity is so critically important in IT as a whole, just to make sure that we have all of those different opinions and different approaches and different ways about thinking things that all become part of those decisions. Or AI is a good example. It carries the bias of the programmer because that's his frame of reference and that's what he writes. The diversity that would go into that project, if it was 5 people that maybe some learned all of their skills from the trial of hard knocks, and some learned their skills from the military, and some learned their skills from different schools, and some came from a completely different perspective that wrote code for something else that now got brought into the industry. All of those are different ways of thinking that when that code gets formalized and that program gets done, I think are so critical. And that's one thing I really applaud Apple for, since we were talking about Apple, is they look at skills-based hiring. They don't look at your pedigree. They hire the person, not the paper, and realize that all of those different viewpoints and different experiences create a better experience for the products that they put out.
I agree. And, it's a very interesting time right now, Carrie, to be where we are, right? Like there's so much going on in this world. And I think the climate obviously is leading to a lot of decisions being made from a high order executive perspective. Like we have certain states like banning certain types of technology. I guess I'm going to keep this like not political. I'm going to try and do my best there. But I think like for those listening, I think you kind of get where I'm going with this. Like it's so important. Like when you say like the bias is upon like the coder, right? Like the way that we are programming and telling these systems to work or to quote unquote learn are based on humans, right? So if you really want to get moral here, I mean, you really have to think about, to take it one step further, like who are we hiring? Who are the people that are creating those codes, right? Where are they coming from? Are we doing the right vetting process to actually make sure we have the right people in those positions to do what they're doing? Because obviously they're in the movies, we always see, the robots that turn on the humans, right? That are originally part of the human force. And then now all of a sudden the robots were fighting our own robots that we created. And, Westworld, I always think of Westworld, like it always comes up to my mind, but I just think it's so important that we just do it with the right intentions and that we do it to make this world a safer place. And we are hiring and we are enabling. One, we are hiring the right people. And then two, we are able to enable everyone, right, to make this world better. So
you think of Westworld, I usually think of Minority Report. We have come a long way, I think, and it always amazes me how somebody's imagination gets paralleled into something that actually comes to fruition in tech.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Jetsons, and I know you and I have talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
Literally, it is happening right before our eyes, and it is so common now that somebody comes up with an idea and it's there. I mean, we were chatting also the other day. I had seen that article that was released by Elon Musk, and he's now making efforts to create like computer chips and that will enable those who have physical disabilities, who one either can't like move their legs, or somebody who's been in an accident and needs to go through rehab. But then to take that one step further, we can help heal the motor skills. But even if they can't be healed, then we can supplement with technology, which is very scary for some people to hear and think about. But at the same time, if you think about the reward and how you can make that person's life so much better, right, due to the unfortunate event, and then turn that corner with them for the right reasons. I mean, I am sorry, but I have to say, I want everyone to have good lives.
And, Tech for good is my favorite part of tech. I love when you see those stories where somebody did something simple enough to make a wheelchair that moves a person to the vertical position when they're up at a counter, or they want to have a conversation. How brilliant is that? Yeah. That would not have been possible without tech. And to your point, that helping people walk that have spinal cord injuries and things like that, it's tech for good. It's such a fine time to be in this industry where the littlest thing makes the biggest difference.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing what we can, I think we should start our own little organization and we can call it Tech for Good, because
I love that.
I think it would, and I think, it's just, we really need, I think, as an industry, whether it's, I would say security as a whole, and then I would say tech as a whole. I mean, if we're doing it for the right reasons and we're doing this to help ourselves and unleash creativity and make a more clear path for us as we continue to evolve as society, I am all for it. I mean, and I will tell you, like, coming from Johnson Controls, I never answered that second part of your question, but Johnson Controls put me through a 6-month training program at at my company when I first graduated from college, and we learned mechanical and electrical systems. And I became a mini HVAC building automation expert thanks to them. And what I was, where I'm going with this is that, the intention that JCI had, right? The initial intention, the morals behind why we do that. Why are we educating the youth? Well, we need to make the youth strong. We need to make them be able to continue the legacy, right? And all the intention of HVAC obviously is to make spaces more comfortable. And it's all being done for the best reasons, right? We want someone to go into an office and be able to feel comfortable within their space. If it's too hot, you don't want to be there. And so it's just interesting how with technology, like depending on the side of the table you're sitting at, right, will really, really affect, I think, a lot of people's opinions and point of views. But I will just say that, there's so many things out there and so many ways that you can learn and get into the industry and be a part of the movement, because I really do believe we're going to do some amazing things in the next few years with all the technology coming out and what we have today.
I wholeheartedly agree. And there's so many different options and jobs in tech. I've been doing this podcast for a year now, and I could probably do it for 7 more and still not hit on all the jobs and all the cool technology that's out there. So
yeah,
I will say this, we're bumping up close to our time. If you wanted to leave some folks with some parting words of wisdom or, advice moving forward, what would you have to say?
I love that question. I feel like I get that one a lot, and my answer is always different because it depends on the day and how I'm feeling. But I will say that, I guess my love letter to everybody in the industry is, it's really important that as we evolve and we grow, whether it's from a technical perspective, a personal perspective, latch on to the proper mentors and leaders, and doesn't always have to be somebody that's older than you, or it could always be it could even be someone younger than you, right? We hear coach up, coach down, and if it wasn't for my leaders and also my peers who I call coaches and friends, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am in this industry. I know a lot of it comes from me, but it was so important to my own progression to be the sponge and to be willing to learn from others. And, even you, Carrie, like, thank you for everything you've been teaching me. I think it's just important as we're young and we grow that we really, really keep ourselves open to all the different opportunities and learn from as many people as we can.
I think that's amazing advice. And I can honestly say that I have never been in a mentor relationship where I didn't learn as much from my mentee as they probably learned from me. So it definitely is great. And there's lots of places to get mentors. Has a formal mentor program that we were talking about earlier for people in the security industry. You can request mentors on LinkedIn even now. I do quite a few on that site. There's a lot of different professional organizations through your school. There's lots of places to find those. And, they don't have to be your same sex. They don't even have to be in your same industry. They can just give you professional advice and that kind of stuff, which is so important. So yeah, thanks for that. I will thank you for your time today. We are certainly out of time for this one, but for the rest of you, we certainly look forward to hosting you on another edition of this podcast series. And thanks for listening. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.